Gildas, the floor is yours, and thank you for Desjardins to host this park.
Thank you so much, Valeria. It's a pleasure to be here today. So my name is Gildas Poissonnier. I'm a manager in sustainability and responsible finance at Desjardins. I've been here for 2 years, and really it's been a pleasure working this is the largest financial cooperative in Canada, and we have been working very hard to present what we are presenting to you today. It's just the official release of our new climate strategy, so it's very timely. And Valeria, if you can share the slides, that would be perfect, so that I can get started. So my aim is to really present you the broad lines. Obviously, we don't have the time to get into the details, but it's really to give you how we did to that climate ambition, how did we get there, but also present you what we think are the specific aspect of it. So if we continue to the next slide, obviously, and I'm sure this is also the case in your various jurisdictions or geographies, the landscape of commitments. So yes, this one. The landscape is very evolving very rapidly on climate change. There is no doubt about it. And this slide shows you just for Canadian mostly, but also a bit of US, how the commitments have raised and in the past 6 months. So all those different images show you different entities from commitment to carbon net zero. What's important, however, to note are a few differences. First, there is a timeline. So you will see that some entities like Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs or the American banks usually will target 2050 for carbon zero. Then others will target maybe a bit earlier, like Vancity with 2040. The second important thing when you look at carbon net zero commitment is to look at what actually the perimeter of their ambition is. So what do they commit on when they say we will become carbon net zero? So you have two colors, you know, in the little leaf. You have the dark green leaves and you have the light green leaves. So when it's light green, it's only that there is a pledge on operational emissions. So when we say operational emission, it's emissions that are related to your buildings, to your cars, to your fleet. And so it's very narrow and it's very internal focus. That's good. That's a starting point. And I think in 2020, you know, probably all our institutions should be focusing at least on operational emission. But when you look at the dark green leaves, it's usually a commitment to carbon net zero and also the financed emission, which is much bigger, which is much more challenging because it's basically the emissions from the clients. So the companies, the businesses we lend money to. So when those companies make a commitment to become carbon neutral on that perimeter, that's a big difference and a complete different story. So we have been looking at that, and definitively there is a need for our institution, like financial cooperatives, to position ourselves in that landscape. It didn't start today. It obviously started a long time ago already. We had our first environmental fund in 1990, so 30 years ago already. But really, in our history, in 2017, we had a milestone that was clear when we made a commitment to support the Paris Accord, so the 2015 Paris Accord, and we had the first set of targets. Those targets, they had a timeline towards 2020. And the good news is that we reached those targets. We had some around charging station. We had a goal to reduce our operational emissions, but also to work on the emission from our funds. This was really the starting point for development in our organization around climate change perspective. We did reinforce that by being also signatories to a few international commitments. You are probably familiar with the Principle for Responsible Banking, the PRB, which we signed in 2019. We were the first Canadian institution to do so. Desjardins Group also has an insurance business, so we signed also the Principle for Sustainable Insurance, so the PSI, and we were also long-term signatories of the PRI, so the Principle for Responsible Investment. So with that, we had a good combination of the different line of business of Desjardins, which was really the challenge we were facing in 2020, because really we reached our initial targets by 2020, but the big challenge was to make sure that we integrate ESG, so environmental, social, and governance, and climate change into our 2024 strategic plan. So how to make sure that the whole organization is aware of those trends. So we were able to promote those topics through different means. First, there is a VP level orientation, ESG orientation committee that was put in place, and monthly meetings. So we have 12 VP that get together and make the necessary arbitrage or the necessary decision making when it comes to business decision when it comes to climate change. We also had an internal audit. So our internal audit function did review our sustainability policy, our management practice, and made recommendation on how to improve our performance in that topic. Another thing that we did last year in 2020 was to do a global benchmark of climate ambitions in the financial sector. It was really done with international consultant. We hired Deloitte France to help us in that perspective. We also worked on with EY on the risk climate change integration, and that really helped us, set the bar for proposing a climate ambition that would be challenging and also would put us in a leadership position, we believe. Another point that I think is very important when you go into carbon net zero discussion on your finance definition is to have a strong methodological foundation. So we did sign up on an initiative called PCAF, so PCAF, PCAF, which stands for Partnership for Carbon Accounting Financials. And really what it is, it's a global movement towards a good methodology to measure the emissions that are related to your lending activities or to your investment activities, which is the key to provide you a robust baseline as to your financed emission. So all that together, you see it's very coherent, it's very integrative within the organization. Help us define our new ambitious climate action plan, which we unveil today, Earth Day 2021. So if we go to the next slide, I will present you the key element of our new climate change strategy. So basically, it is to be by 2040 carbon net zero on our extended operations, and I will explain to you what it means by extended operations, and also our financed emissions for 3 key sectors. So we started since 1917. So on the left side, on the gray column, it did include our office buildings, our transportation, our paper consumption. So that was very operational, internally focused, and that's good at the starting point. We reduced those emissions as much as we could, and what we couldn't reduce, we compensate by buying carbon offsets on certified and good quality carbon offsets on our markets. Now, by 2040, what is the game? What is the end game? So I'm going to the second column. We will continue to be carbon neutral on our operations, so working on reducing those emissions from this operation. But we will also add to it our supply chain. So the top 100 key suppliers of Desjardins, we will work with them to understand what is the associated emissions with our procurement activity with them. What can they do to reduce the associated emissions? And we also work with them to monitor that progress. And the last part, which is the most challenging, is also to include a portion of our financed emissions. So what is that portion? We have limited it to 3 key sectors in the lending and our equity investment in 3 key sectors. So the energy sector, real estate, and transportation. That's very important. Those are 3 sectors that the government of Canada is also focusing on at the federal and provincial level. Those are sectors that, you know, will also be levers for action for other sectors to move, because every company uses energy. Most of the company use real estate or some office level at one point. And many companies do also have a supply chain where there is some transportation involved. So we believe by focusing on those 3 key sectors, we should be able to make a difference. And by targeting 2040, it puts a good pressure on our organization to move forward and be focused on those activities. We believe that that contribution will put us in a good place to make a meaningful contribution to the overall Paris Agreement objective of to become a global economy to be carbon net zero by 2050. And obviously, the idea is to adjust as we go. And for that, we have planned to have a 5-year adjustment period. So if you go to the next slide, the idea was not only to present an ambition long-term, so by 2040, but also to present that we put ourselves in action right away. And so that's why we have an objective for the next 5 years, so until 2025, where you have 5 main elements of action. The first one, and it's in line with our focus on the energy sector, is to make sure that we increase the part of the renewable energy sector in our portfolio. So you see some objective, 35%, that's the share of renewable in our lending portfolio in the energy sector that we are targeting by 2025. In terms of equity investment, also, we expect to have a 2 billion investment portfolio in renewable energy infrastructure. So that's an increase by 66%. And also, we want to be part of some new opportunities in renewable energy generation in biogas. So generating natural biogas from agricultural waste. So we want to have 5 of those projects by 2025 in our lending portfolio. In terms of transitioning carbon-intensive sectors, we have not taken the stance to exit completely of the fossil fuel sector. We have some specific products that are focusing, that are providing that option to our members. But internally, what we want to do is to support a just transition of those sectors. So what we'll do is to focus and support large corporations that demonstrate 3 elements: a solid ESG performance, factoring climate risk, and third, that have set credible targets to reduce greenhouse gas emission. So we'll do case-by-case analysis when required for those deals before making new business, but also when developing business to make sure that there is a progress of those clients in that perspective. And last, in that section, we also want to define science-based targets for our own investment and our financing to make sure that the trajectory that we are aiming is aligned. In terms of supply chain, I already mentioned it. So we'll work with our suppliers to reduce that footprint. And last but not least, we know we need to mobilize our workforce, our employees, into that journey. So we aim to have a training made available, but not also available, which will be mandatory. So we'll have by 2023. 85% of our employees, you see we have about 50,000 employees, a bit less. And so we're aiming to have that proportion of our employees trained on those principles of sustainable development with a perspective of responsible finance. On top of that, some specific training for targeted employees who have specific roles, in particular in development of responsible investment products. And on the right-hand side, a couple other examples of commitments. So really, it's a portfolio approach. We really worked with all the business units of the organization, all the function, HR, marketing, etc., to have an integrated approach to climate change. And that's really, I think, one of the key features of our new strategy. So I'll stop here, and maybe I would like to take the last 6 minutes to have maybe a conversation with you. If you have any questions, I think it's always more interesting to have an exchange.
Yeah, I have one question. So what's your view on drastic measures such as completely cutting down on carbon investment? So no loans anymore for carbon-based energy production, a carbon-based industry at all from immediately now on?
Yeah, so definitely, I think it's a very first question for many people. On our side, we believe, and we are in Canada, which is a very energy-intensive country. So that's a topic that is challenging because there are a lot of workers also that are dependent on that industry, especially here. So we need to think twice before making such decision. And so we think twice and maybe even 3 times to that. And really, the conclusion to us that it's more important to support the transition. So you need to find the right balance. It's supporting, yes, but you need also to be demanding. You also need to set clear expectation to those companies that they need to put themselves in action towards that transition. So that's why we have those 3 elements that we demand from the carbon intensive sector. So energy is one of them, obviously. So we'll look at ESG performance, climate risk. So you can think of TCFD reporting and TCFD performance in that perspective. And also, and very important, that they have set credible targets for reducing greenhouse gas emission. That being said, and if you stay on that one. On the left-hand side, you can see that we want to increase the part of renewable energy sector. And for example, if you increase the share of renewables, that means that the other type of energy will reduce. So definitely there is it's a check and balance for us. We need to not pull out completely straight away because that would be kind of a bit brutal towards that sector. However, we need to send a clear signal and also put interim milestone for us to make sure that we keep us on track towards the decarbonization pathway.
Thank you for that answer.
And maybe one last comment I would say. So I mentioned we have a responsible investment product line. It's called Societera, and it's a very fast-growing part of our investment category. It reached 5 billion last year with 55% increase year over year. So a big success, and that's a fossil and pipeline-free investment product solution. So we offer also that kind of option to members who want to make that move, but we don't make it, a larger overall commitment for all the business units. Are there any other questions? So maybe Valeria, if you go to the next slide, and obviously that presentation will be made available to you all. I just put, maybe I thought it would be interesting for you to understand how we are structured. From the top, there is really a clear mandate from the board of directors on climate change. So it's called the Governance and Responsible Finance Commission. Then there is our management committees with all the executive that is fed by a subcommittee called the ESG Steering Committee. So that's the one that is VP level. And below that, you have working groups, one with the business sector. So you can think investment, lending, business lending, etc. But also with a support function, so HR, real estate, IT, etc. So we work also on an internal perspective and also on the business unit perspective. And all of that is supported by a community of practice. It's more professionals who are interested in the topic. So we have a Yammer, internal Yammer, where we can share ideas and topics. So that's the way we try to trickle down across the organization. And the last element I wanted to share is our recent report, responsibility and social responsibility report, and cooperative and social responsibility report. And the link is clickable. So you can see that Desjardins has been here for 220 years. Last year, we were founded in 1900. So that was a big year for us last year, and we are proud to be here. Very strong organization still, and we hope to be also in the next 20 years, and hopefully to reach that target for 2040. Any other questions, reaction, comments?
Thank you very much, Gildas. And for the ones who have questions, don't hesitate to ask them or put them on the chat. I maybe have a question, or I have a question because I think of a program that we organize within CIBP is a CIBP Link training program. And we had end of March, the innovation module. And we invited an economist, we invited a Belgian economist, and we invited him to speak about the current crisis, the current pandemic crisis, and the impact on the economy, right, and on debt. And he brought the concept, if I'm not mistaken, and some of you are here, so please write on the chat if it's correct. But what struck me in his approach is he made, as as an economist, he made a differentiation between investment and real expenses. And again, my terms are maybe not right, but he said that if you decide to invest on climate change and on SDGs, etc., it means that normally you are, as an economist, you are supposed to receive a return on that. And the investment should, you should have them a timeline on when are you supposed to receive back from this investment, the return of that. And he said what is not fair, according to him, is that those green projects can take so much time, and it's a depth on the younger generation that maybe the younger generation will pay only within 100 years, for instance, for all the changes that needs to be done. So he said that we have to use the right wording. Oh, it's an investment, and we agree that we want to see some results and money back on that, or we accept it as a loss and as something we need to do to have a better life, let's say, or to save the planet. It was striking to hear that. Because, as I said, when we see the youngsters demonstrating in the streets in 2019, they believe that the change can be made today, and that everyone is aware of what it costs. So question for you: how do you approach this pressure and this responsibility also as an organization, as Desjardins?
Yeah. Well, first, I think back to your comment on youth, our president is very sensitive, or very yes. I don't know if sensitive is the right word. I think it's a French trickle, but you really look at the youth perspective in that sense, and that's really a great influence for us in our thinking. We have a youth advisory committee that brings perspective and really drove us towards what the ambition that we presented today. I think you're right. There is a part of risk taking. That's an investment. There is no doubt about it. But first, we see more and more that returns are there for those investments. There are also risk mitigation impact. You know, fossil fuel sectors have not performed so well in the past 2 years. So in the way there is divestment in some perspective, it could be also positively perceived. So the second aspect I would also point it, it's important to set a clear, even if it's long-term target for the organization, because what we presented today, it's a big change management project within such a large organization as Desjardins. And for that, you need to send a signal that is both long-term, so that people get a feeling of where we are going, and still feel not pressure too quickly. But also then the next step is that you need to put some concrete action in place. So that's why we have that first 5 years plan, which will hopefully be able to show that those change bring good result, good return, and help us reach that long-term goal. So it's a fine balance between investment, but also taking a risk, for sure.
Thank you for your answer,
May
Gildas.
I, Valeria?
Of course, Monsieur Rubens.
First, Gildas, thank you very much for your explanation. It was very interesting. I have a question. You mentioned in your slide number 3 a document that's called PRB, Principles for Responsible Banks.
Yes.
Is that a document from the regulators, or is something internal from the Desjardins?
Thank you, Mr. Rubens. It's a document that is not regulatory. It's because we are signatory to the Principle for Responsible Banking, which is a UN-led initiative. And so when you sign that initiative, you are bound to make an annual report to demonstrate the progress. And basically, PRBs are about measuring the positive and negative impacts that your lending portfolio may have on your surrounding environment, on your basically here for us for Canada, in Canada. So basically, we look at our lending portfolio in agriculture, in real estate, and we try to estimate. First, it's qualitative, but as we mature our journey in that topic, we hope to bring in some more quantitative measures of those impacts. And so we disclose, you're right, our first Principle for Responsible Banking disclosures this year. It's a self-commitment. It's not regulatory, but because we signed the PRBs, we obviously we follow up on our engagement, and we publish that annual report, which is available on our website, and you will have the link if you want to give a look.
Oh. Okay, thank you, Gildas.
My pleasure. All right. I think we are coming up to. We had 30 minutes for the presentation, and we have a bit more time. That's it. Okay. I was afraid we had to close at 10, but I think we have a bit more time, so that's good. We can have more conversation.
Yes, indeed.
So I'm curious to see how many of your organization have already started to think on carbon net zero, or is that something that you have heard being discussed in your own organization? Is that something that you have already committed to, or you are thinking of, or maybe third option that you didn't you hadn't looked at before? And it's not yes, it is recorded, but it's not an official response. You can provide your own perspective.
Gildas, in Brazil,
Yes.
we are doing a lot of things about this issue, but I would say that most of it is done because the request is of the regulators, not because the people conscious. The people are not conscious really because of that. But here, next year, we are going to start a new phase of this process. We have to implement a lot of new requests, and it would be very interesting if we could change with you some experience.
Yes. Yeah, I would say, and to if you go back to my not needing to present it again, but you know the one where you saw all the announcements from the other banks in Canada at least and North America, it's definitively a topic where from a competitive perspective as well, you need to have a stance, you need to have a position. There is a bit of regulatory pressure, so our regulator, which is the AMF here, Autorité des Marchés Financiers, is starting to ask a couple of questions, but it's really the beginning. So from the time being, it's really more a competitive perspective, and also making sure that we connect with the expectation from our members and our employees, which often are more advanced than what we are able to do. So it's a combination, but you're right. There is a part of regulatory angle that could be taken, especially in Europe, I think.
Okay.
Yes, I think that as a consumer, when you start exchanging with a company or a bank or an individual, the first thing that you nowadays you tackle is the seriousness that this company or this person is tackling the uncertainties and damage and consequences of global heating. So it's the first thing you can see today, even as a consumer. You want to buy a bottle of water, you want to buy a new sweatshirt, etc. You immediately look how health conscious climate conscious the company is or the person, and it puts some pressure where you have to show the green your green hand, let's say. So indeed, there is pressure from regulators, pressure from consumers, pressure from all kind of sectors.
Yeah, and I would also add to it that it's an opportunity. We need also always to remind us that there is a two side of the story. There is a risk management, but there is also the opportunity side. I think more and more it's an opportunity for interactions with governments. Governments have usually set themselves carbon reduction objectives. Just as of today, I think our Prime Minister in Canada is participating in the climate summit that is being organized by Joe Biden, and made commitment to increase, the targets, the reduction targets for Canada. But then the question for them is obviously how to do that, and they are in need of partnership. They are demanding partnerships to help them move into the same direction. So I think it's a good also opportunity to connect with different partners, be it governmentals, NGOs, and obviously your members, your clients, in terms of helping them understand that trend, understand the opportunity side of it, And that's really also the angle we want to take. It's being a trusted advisor to our members to make sure that they see that trend coming, that climate change coming, and that they're able to identify opportunities in each of the sectors. So that's why training is so important for us within our employees. We hope to be able to identify those opportunities with our members, help them discuss it, and be proactive in that discussion. But I'm convinced that it will bring also many opportunities in terms of business development in the end for Desjardins as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Gildas, for this opening door. Indeed, for every one of us here as cooperative banks, to see the opportunity to connect with local organizations and with their local government institutions. So a good step for all of us to start with, if not done so yet. If there are no any other questions from your side today, again, we thank you, Gildas, a lot for being with us today. Very, very interesting. Indeed, your presentation will be shared, and for the ones who want to have one-to-one discussions with Gildas or a member of his team, don't hesitate to contact us or directly Gildas. And we hope that this has been of use for you and to develop your business on climate change. So thank you very much again to everyone, and we wish you a good end of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And good luck with